think we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Hall. I will be your host for this webinar, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm joined by Wendelin and John Choi, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Yes, good day, good morning, good afternoon from my side. My name is Wendelin. I'm from the research department of ForFlow, and I'm going to introduce the sustainability part to you in a few minutes.
Good morning. My name is John Choi. I'm part of the Atlanta office software team, and I'll be presenting on the ForFlow Toro today, which is going to be the software.
All right. Well, thank you guys both for taking the time to jump on here, and thank you everybody who's in the audience for taking the time to come and hopefully learn something today. That's really what we want to do is, maybe provide some education on a big topic that's constantly talked about in supply chain, which is sustainability and carbon emissions, scope 3, and transportation. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And Wendelin, you're from the ForFlow Research Department. Maybe if you would like to kind of start the conversation for us, just to educate us about, what are some of the trends that you see from a research aspect in logistics today as it pertains to scope 3 sustainability?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Very glad to educate a bit. As you mentioned already, sustainability is one of the major trends these days. We do a lot of trend research and we talk to a lot of top managers. And interestingly, from our perspective, it's not just a trend that is, say, around in the news. It's also something that top managers increasingly integrate in their strategy and that makes companies successful as well. I will come to that a bit later, but you see more than 60% of managers are actually seeing climate change as a part of sustainability activities as having a very high impact on their business. We have other stakeholders that are putting pressure on companies. That is, on the one hand, regulations, and on the other hand, consumers. And before I come back to what's in the end the economic perspective of a company, I would like to point a bit out where's the pressure coming from and why is it increasing to actually do something about sustainability to reduce carbon emissions where the focus is on now. And as you can see here, it is a political thing. There's increasingly regulations coming up where governments increasingly do act and do put prices on carbon emissions. And that's where it's becoming very interesting for companies, obviously. So we see on a very global perspective, we see the Paris Agreement, which is nowadays, let's say, a paramount initiative to reduce carbon emissions. And that's to cap the global temperature at 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit in order to allow our future to be still a livable planet. So that's a global agreement between governments. But as you can see on the map on the right side, also the US state policies are putting that into laws and putting some trading, some carbon pricing programs and schemes into action. You see on the map, it's about 50% of the population in the US that is currently part of such a carbon pricing program. That means a scheme to drive the emissions down by putting a price on it. The second perspective I want to point a bit out is the consumers. We all are not only business people, we're also consumers. And we know that there's a lot of advertising, a lot of messaging around sustainability, around how to make our decisions green. And that is something that we also see at the consumer perspective, that the sentiment changes. And again, I want to point a bit on the financial perspective. We see, for example, in studies that 80% of consumers are actually willing to pay more for green products, for products that have been produced, but also transported in a sustainable way. And there's even a price tag here. We can say roughly 10% overall is a premium price tag of sustainability. So people are actually willing to pay 10% more, which has an impact on margins and revenues as well for sustainable products.
Yeah, and Wendell, and those 2 points speak the most volume to me, maybe just coming at this from the business side. So I agree. Sustainability is a huge topic of discussion. I feel like it's at every single conference that I go to. Everyone is always trying to, act in a more sustainable way. But selfishly, I kind of think, why, what is the benefit to the corporations that are doing this at the end of the day? And I think what you've just identified is two different monetary streams that are associated with sustainability, right? So we're looking at government regulations as the first one, and there's monetary value attached to that. There's, incentives to be more sustainable from a government regulatory standpoint. So that's kind of the first monetary element. And then the second one is, being able to charge a higher price, being able to, capture some more profit margin here. Another great channel to kind of be able to capture. And also you're doing a good thing, at the end of the day by participating in more sustainable practices, which I know you'll talk about a little bit more, but just given our audience, is more on the business side of things, I think it's really critical to call those out that, hey, here's what your business stands to gain by implementing some more sustainable practices. So this is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll let you get back to it here.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy, for that. That's interesting indeed. So we see that these sentiments and the government regulations, they also come down to the company level, let's say. We see two major trends here again that I would like to share with you. The one is that sustainability does boost revenues. That is a statistics thing. Empirically, we can see that organizations that have included sustainable practices are the more successful ones. That might be because of the consumers paying more. We don't know that in that detailed level, but we can see there's a clear correlation. And the second one is that companies always also see it as a risk not to take action now in this huge area of sustainability and not to picture themselves as a company that is innovative, that is progressive, and that is taking care of the environment. And as well, a lot of the revenues of companies are at stake. Seeing regulations from government side might take action and might in the end change the framework where business is done. You see a chart on the right side here, different industries, and most important ones here, like we are talking about transport, logistics, automotive, aerospace, defense. More than 50% or up to 50% of the earnings are at stake from government interventions. One final thing I want to point out here, I know we're all not from the HR departments, but we all have to really take care about how to get good people in our companies, in our teams, how to get good stuff. And here we can also see that it's easier for companies who focus on sustainability to find the good employees, to find enough employees for all the tasks that need to be done. Now, the question that's come a bit closer to our core business, transportation, optimization, how can companies in the end do something about sustainability more than just, let's say, talking and having nice marketing messages? So for that, we should look at where do the emissions come from and what does it cost to change them, because it's an economic decision in the end. And for the first question, you see this nice picture here that we have a lot of transportation in the US a lot of emissions in the US coming from the transportation sector. 28%, that is almost a third, more than a quarter of the total emissions in the US are from the transportation sector. And out of that, 23% are from transportation. That is, we have here identified one major lever where we as logistics, supply chain executives can actually do something about sustainability and reduce our carbon footprint. Having said that, I also want to point out there's still a lot to do here. It's not the first time we talk about emissions and about sustainability. This topic is already 20, 30 years old, but it hasn't had so much of an impact yet. We see over year, emissions in the transportation sector is still rising instead of falling, although we say it's such an important thing to save the planet. And also we've seen you can gain higher revenues, you can get higher margins, and you have happier employees, but still not much is happening. Over the last 30 years, each single year, the emissions have been rising instead of falling, except for the major crises we had, like in 2008, 2009, or the COVID pandemic. So still, there's a lot to do. And for now, that would be my educational part, because now I think I would go a bit more into, where's the action points on the next two slides.
Yeah, and I think you did a really nice job of giving us something tangible. The way that you described having nice marketing messages about sustainability, I think, is very common in the business world today. But bringing it towards a tangible action item like reducing transportation emissions, that gives us something to actually be able to work with, and instead of just having a nice marketing message. So thank you for that, Wendelin.
Yes, let's go back. Remember, it was transportation, one of the major emission factors. And you can see here our framework of fields of action for emission reduction. There's 4 major categories, and there's a lot of single actions. Don't worry, I won't go through all of them in detail. Just want to give you the big picture, how you can achieve something, and then also where you might want to start. Let's start at the bottom here for now. The, let's say, easy but pretty expensive way is to compensate your emissions. That means you can pay somebody to plant a tree or something like that balances your emissions from your transportation. Just as an example. The second one is also quite complicated, is to improve your processes. You can use alternative technologies. For example, you can, let's say, electric vehicles, something like this, or fuel cell, you name it. There's a lot of technical innovation out there that has a high impact on emissions, but again, also quite pricey investment to do. The second last one is to shift to use other modes of transportation. Saying trucking is not the most eco-efficient. So if you would change to railroad, you would already save a lot of emissions, or to barges or intermodal transportation. But let's come to the most important one: prevent. The best emissions are those that haven't been not been released. And here there's a huge potential in our experience and what we see in our clients in improving utilization, improving routing, improving the network. So by simple, let's say simple, John will show us that it's not that simple, maybe in the end, by using these simple methods of optimizing transportation, truck utilization, you can have you can have a field of action that does not only reduce emissions, but often at the same time costs. And that makes it very interesting and very special. So my last words here, you see, I'm a big fan of the first one of utilization because it's really a good one. In the end, if you're building up a strategy on how to reduce emissions, you should cover all of them, and you should have a detailed analysis, which is the best of them. I would like now to hand back to you, Andy, and especially I would like to know, what do you think how software can help us with these emission reductions?
Well, thank you. I will answer that question, but before I do, I just want to say thank you, Wendelin. I think you did a really nice job of taking a broad topic and really making it consumable for the audience here today. So, just to kind of recap what you've gone through, we've talked about the government regulations, the consumer sentiment, and the monetary impact of those two forces on why sustainability is important. And then we've also kind of talked about some economic and social factors as well, like retaining good employees and some of the broader benefits of implementing more sustainable practices within your business. So the other thing that I really just love, and again, thank you for this presentation. I love that you've given us clear action items and a clear path to be able to kind of attack this topic of carbon emission reduction and transportation cost savings. So I think you've done a wonderful job with that. And now that you've outlined our problem statement very well, let's go to what one of the solutions might be for that. So really quick background, 4Flow and John and I will present a software solution called 4Flow Toro, which directly attacks load building, CO2 and Scope 3 emissions. But here's just some company background on us, some customers that we work with and the size of our business. But now I want to focus on kind of the solution to this problem that Wendelin's outlined. So 4Flow Toro is a software solution that John's going to walk through in just a moment here. What 4Flow Toro is trying to do at its core is reduce your total number of transports by maximizing transport utilization. So it can be any mode of transportation, it can be any MOT. And what we're trying to do is maximize that utilization rate, minimize the total amount of transports that are on the road. And this directly addresses, everything that Wendelin has discussed. This is going to help you reduce emissions and help you reduce transportation costs at the same time. And then it also obviously is going to be a more sustainable business practice that you can kind of use in a marketing fashion to potentially capture some more revenue from consumers. So that's what we want to talk about next. And I will hand it over to John to begin that conversation. And again, the focus here is going to be creating significant cost savings and improving the utilization rates of your transports.
Good. Thank you, Andy. So I'm going to be sharing my screen now, and what I'm going to be showing you is the software itself that we've been talking about. So what you see here is 4Flow Toro, and this is going to be the landing page. And in this environment, what you're seeing here, it's connected to our own SAP environment, and this software can directly integrate with SAP, but it can also be integrated with any ERP if you're choosing. As a transportation planner or material planner, I'm responsible for making sure that all the demand that I need is being delivered and to save costs while doing so effectively and easily. And as Andy and Wendelin mentioned, we really want to prevent our carbon emissions by reducing the amount of them. So normally what I would do is organize trucks to make sure that all the demands required for each day is delivered. Or maybe I'll try to look through the demand myself and try to consolidate them. Either way, what we find is that there are a lot of inefficiencies that exist as part of this process between the demand planning and the transportation planning. However, now that my ERP is integrated with Toro, I can come here to run a optimization. And with the information provided by my ERP, Toro will pull the necessary data and optimize my transports. So once I click on that run optimization, what I get is a optimized result that I can now analyze and review. And I can see that all of my demands that you see here have now been optimized into one single shipment. And that's kind of extrapolated across multiple shipments. Ultimately, this will reduce my transportation costs in my network and reduce my carbon footprint. and I'm able to easily see the benefits. I've reduced my trucks from 58 to 46. I've increased my utilization by about 20%, and I've reduced my transportation spending by $6,000 and my carbon emissions by 1.56 tons. Afterwards, if I'm happy with the results, I can select them all and click accept to send this information back to my ERP, and I'll be finished with my optimization for the day.
Thank you, John. And let me just take the screen back over here. All right. So thank you for that walkthrough. And, you gave us some results with some demo data there, right? So, of course, everything looks great with demo data, but let's take a look at a real customer case study of someone who's used 4Flow Toro. This is from a 4Flow customer who's a tier 1 supplier in the automotive industry. And I really want to just focus on these two results and benefits of transportation cost savings of 12% and carbon emission reduction of 13%. So these are the direct metrics that we've been talking about for the last, 20 or so minutes here. It's no surprise or secret that 4Flow created this product to directly deal with all of the issues and challenges that Wendelin has called out. So this is a strategic decision, made by 4Flow to create a very, very targeted product to deal with these challenges. And it's been effectively doing that. And I hope that's what you get from this slide is some good success from a customer. So now I'll kind of leave you all with this. I hope through today's conversation, you have learned something new about sustainability. You've taken something actionable from today and said, hey, I know an area of my business that I can focus on to improve our sustainable practices and reduce our CO2 emissions. And that's really, I think, my biggest hope. If you've liked what you've seen today and you're interested in using more or interested in learning some more about 4Flow Toro, we offer a activity called a transportation assessment, which is very, very simple. It takes about 3 weeks to do. And essentially what we would do for you is take a look at some historical transportation data from you. We would run that through 4Flow Toro and say, here is the optimized results. These are the improvements that Toro would have made to consolidate your shipments. And then we can kind of compare and contrast the differences. So it's a really simple process, takes about maybe 2 hours worth of work on the client side and 3 weeks in total from, the first time that we speak until we can present the results from this assessment. So I'll leave you with that. If you're interested, feel free to reach out and let us know. You've got our contact information here. And with that, I think that is the full presentation. And if there's any questions, we could accept those now if we see any in the chat box. Well, if there's no questions, I guess we did a good job. So thank you, Wendelin, and thank you, John. I really appreciate the presentation that you guys put together today. For those of you in the audience, if you have any questions, please reach out to myself, reach out to John or Wendelin. We'd be more than happy to have a discussion about this topic. And thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.